Hi guys, and welcome back to another video on my channel. Just quickly before we get into today's video, I did just want to chat with you guys a little bit. So if you are completely uninterested in anything that I'm going to say and you are just specifically here for the case, I will leave a timestamp in the description box below so that you can click on that and get straight into the case. But anyways, first off, I just wanted to mention in today's video, even though it is not an alien video, that the government has come out and confirmed that UFOs exist. And that was early last week, but I will explain why I didn't mention that in last week's video as we move on with this little chit chat. But anyways, I do think that is super interesting and amazing and really cool, and it is something that we should all be really excited about because this is like a huge moment in history, and I just think that that is so amazing, so I did want to mention it in today's video. The next thing that I wanted to touch base on briefly is that, as some of you do know, my laptop last week was giving me a lot of trouble, and it had actually ended up that my laptop had broke. So that sucks. It sucked, and even in the moment I was like, oh my god. But just to make things worse is I had filmed the video that went up last Friday, or at least the video that I'm hoping went up last Friday, and it was already ready to be edited on Tuesday. So when I woke up on Tuesday morning, I got straight to editing, and I was going to upload the video onto YouTube on Tuesday and just keep it on private. But if you are familiar with the uploading kind of process, when you are uploading a video onto YouTube, it makes the rest of your computer very slow, and I wanted to be able to do research all day for today's video. So I just decided that I wasn't going to upload that video even though I had already finished editing it, and that I was going to wait till around dinner time when I wasn't on my laptop to upload that video onto YouTube. So I went about the day doing research for today's video, and then around 4 o'clock when I was completely finished, I went to upload that video onto YouTube, and that is when my computer completely crashed. And so obviously I did everything to try and fix it. I asked a million people what I could do. I've tried everything under the sun, and so I was really upset about that, but luckily on Wednesday I was able to get my hands on a new laptop. So I was really excited about that. I came home on Wednesday with the new laptop, sat down, opened up the laptop to start editing the video so that I could get it uploaded on Friday, and that is when I noticed that the new laptop does not have a port for my camera memory stick. So I had to order an adapter online. Luckily I got it off of Amazon Prime, so it was here by Thursday night. And then I edited the video, went to upload it onto YouTube, and for some reason the new laptop will not allow me to upload the video onto YouTube. So as I'm filming this video right now, that video is trying to be processed on YouTube. So this is kind of my really rough and messy explanation as to why Friday's video was either very late or didn't end up going up at all. So I'm really sorry about that, but as you are getting out of all this information, there was literally absolutely nothing I could do. It was completely out of my hands, and I was just having the worst luck with electronics I have ever had in my entire life. But with that all out of the way, let's get right into today's video. The case that we are going to be talking about today is not your average true crime case. Today we are going to be talking about the murder of a woman by the name of Teresita Basa, and more importantly in this case, how her murder ended up being solved. So let's start off by getting a little bit of a background on Teresita. Teresita was born and grew up in the Philippines. She was born in 1929, and her family was pretty well off because her father was a very successful lawyer. Even in her younger years and then going on throughout the rest of her life, Teresita was a pretty reserved woman. She wasn't really a party animal. She rarely ever drank. She never experimented with drugs or anything like that. So you can just kind of get the gist that she was a pretty calm, well-rounded woman. She was very interested in music, and she ended up graduating college with several different degrees, some in music and some in the medical field. And when she was done with college, that is when she decided to move from the Philippines to America. Once moving to America, that is when Teresita would get a job as a respiratory therapist, and that is what she did for a career. But in her spare time, she also taught piano lessons because, again, she did have a very large passion for music. By the year 1977, Teresita was now 47 years old, and she was working at the Edgewater Hospital in Chicago, Illinois. On the evening of February 21st, 1977, Teresita's neighbors became very alarmed when they could smell smoke coming out of Teresita's apartment. Because of this, around 9 p.m., they decided to call the fire department. The fire department arrived at the apartment complex pretty quickly, and they were able to put out the fire, and they thought that that was the end of their job, but that was not even close. And what they went on to find after they put out the fire was just absolutely horrifying. After the fire was put out in the apartment, that is when this case would take a very dark and twisted turn. Once the fire was put out, they kind of were looking around the apartment, and that is when they found the body of 47-year-old Teresita Basa completely nude, with a butcher's knife sticking out of her chest underneath a mattress inside of her very own apartment. On top of that, the clothes that investigators assumed that Teresita would have been wearing were folded very neatly and placed beside the mattress. Because Teresita was found completely naked, police believed that there could have possibly been some kind of sexual motive to her murder. However, once an autopsy was done and everything like that, that turned out to not be the case. Obviously, due to the fact that there had been a butcher's knife sticking out of the body, it was pretty evident to police that Teresita had been murdered. So they started to kind of ask around and try and piece things together, and that is when they got the information from one of Teresita's co-workers that she had told her that she would be having a male friend over that night. But that was really all the information that the coworker had. Teresita never told her a name. She didn't tell him anything about the guy who she was planning on having over. And so although this seemed like a key piece of information, it didn't really lead investigators anywhere. During the investigation, police had a very, very difficult time trying to find absolutely any evidence in this case. Again, the apartment had been set on fire, so any solid evidence had now been burned, and there was nothing left of it. However, something that they were able to find was a note that was written by Teresita herself, and on this note it said, "Get tickets for AS." Now, they tried to hunt down who exactly AS was, because obviously at this point they didn't know who it was, and they couldn't really find anybody in her life who was named AS. However, she did have a coworker whose name was Alan Showery, obviously meaning that his initials were AS, but positively identifying the fact that this was who she was talking about in the note was very, very difficult, and there wasn't really much to go on proving that these two things were related. Once the main investigation was finished, Teresita's body was sent back to the Philippines so that she could be with her family and so that she could receive a proper burial. But unfortunately, due to the lack of evidence in this case, it seemed to have gone cold pretty quickly and remained that way for about 6 months. But 6 months after this case had seemingly gone completely cold, the main detective on this case came into work one day to find a note on his desk saying that he needed to contact the Evanston Police Department regarding the case of Teresita Basa. And this is where this case takes a very big twist and where it gets really perplexing on how exactly this all played out. Once he got this memo, the detective went on pretty quickly to get into contact with the Evanston Police Department, and they put him into contact with a man by the name of Dr. Jose Chua. Now, once he got into contact with this doctor, that is when things get absolutely insane and they start to resemble that of a movie. So Dr. Jose told the detective that his wife, whose name is Remy, had previously worked with Teresita before she had passed away. Both women were therapists and they weren't very close, but they did get along, so much to the point that Remy had actually gone to Teresita's apartment on one occasion to attend a party that Teresita was throwing. While talking to the detective, that is when Dr. Jose told this detective that his wife started to go into this weird trance-like, comatose-like state, and while she was in this state, she claimed that she was Teresita Basa. So basically, he was calling police to inform them that his wife was basically possessed by her deceased co-worker. If you guys aren't already thinking, what is this case? It is just going to get stranger, and that is why I pretty much chose to do this case today, because I have been trying to kind of avoid true crime cases just because of all the chaos that's been going on in the world. But something about this one, just, I had to talk about it. Like, even though the ending isn't happy, it's just like, I don't know, it just really captures you and pulls you right in. So anyways, let's get back to the case. He said that during this time when Remy was in that comatose state, she didn't even really resemble his wife anymore. Yes, she still looked like herself, but she would start talking in a manner and in a voice that he had not recognized as his own wife. So anyways, once she was in this comatose-like state, she would go on to start claiming that she was Teresita Basa and that a man by the name of Alan Showery murdered her and that she needed Dr. Jose's help to solve the case. Now, backtracking here a little bit to the letter that they found in Teresita's apartment that said, "Get tickets for AS." While investigators were kind of following this clue, they found that the only person that they could track down in Teresita's life who had the initials AS was the man by the name of Alan Showery, who worked with Teresita at the hospital. So that was just a little recap on that. After this started to happen, the doctor was not sure what was happening to his wife, but he definitely did not believe that she was being possessed by her deceased co-worker. However, the more this started to happen, the more convinced the doctor became, and so finally he asked Teresita, or I guess the spirit of Teresita, to give him some proof that she was actually taking over his wife's body. And that is when she gave him the names of 4 people who she was very close with. I believe one of them was her brother, and the other 3 were just people that she was very close with in her life. And after giving these 4 names, she then gave the doctor their phone numbers, and she said that Alan Showery had stolen jewelry from her apartment and that these 4 people would be able to identify that the jewelry that Alan Showery had stolen was in fact the jewelry that belonged to Teresita Basa. This kind of cleared all the doubts for the doctor. However, he was still apprehensive as to calling the police because obviously he knew how absolutely insane this story sounded, and he thought that he would be the laughingstock and that nobody would believe him. However, he did end up calling the police eventually and sharing this story with them. Now, what makes this so particularly interesting is when he had contacted the police, he told them about the stolen jewelry, and that was a little bit of information that the police didn't even know. They had no idea that absolutely anything had been stolen out of Teresita's home on the night that she had been murdered. They knew that the home was set on fire, but they didn't know the motive behind the murder, they didn't know why she was naked, and they didn't know that anything was missing from the home. So when he came in and told them about the jewelry, that really sparked a light in the investigation. At first in this case, once the doctor had told the investigators about his story, they didn't really believe him. They thought that he was just some crazy guy calling in with all this made up stuff, but they decided to kind of follow his lead because they didn't have any other clues or anything like that in the case. Again, this case was completely cold. So they decided to go out on a limb and they went down to the apartment of Alan Showery where he lived with his girlfriend, and they just asked Alan if he would come down to the station so that they could question him about the Teresita Basa case, and he did agree to this. Once Alan had been brought down to the police station, they started to question him, and that is when they started to catch him in several lies. So Alan had originally told investigators that he had gone to Teresita's house that evening and that he had gone over there to help her with some trouble that she was having with her television. And then he went on to say that he had to quickly leave Teresita's apartment because he had to go home because they were having some electrical troubles there. So police didn't really see any issue with this. Maybe Alan was super handy with electrical stuff or TVs or things like that. So they just wanted to kind of confirm his story. So they started to ask his girlfriend about this. And straight up, his girlfriend said, Alan is not good with TVs. He would not have gone over to her house to fix her TV because he doesn't know anything about TVs. She then went on to say that there was absolutely no electrical trouble in their apartment that night, and that even if there was, they would have had to call an electrician because Alan was not good with electrical stuff. Not the TV, not the lights, just nothing. So obviously at this point, investigators started to see that there was something very wrong with Alan's story because nothing that he was saying to them was making any sense. So while questioning Alan's girlfriend, they decided to ask her about jewelry. They had said to her, "Have you received any jewelry as a gift lately?" And that is when she said very happily that yes, she had received jewelry from Alan, and that she was actually wearing some of that jewelry at the moment, and that Alan had gifted her this jewelry as a belated Christmas gift. So because of this, investigators started to believe that there was some truth to the doctor's story. So they took down those 4 numbers of the people that Teresita had said would be able to positively identify her jewelry, and they called them into the station, and they did positively identify the jewelry that Alan's girlfriend had been wearing as jewelry that had belonged to Teresita Basa. Because of this, Alan quickly became the main suspect in this case, and he was brought in a second time for questioning, and during this time he caved pretty quickly and he confessed to murdering Teresita Basa. He said that he had killed her because he had just planned on going to her apartment and robbing her, but things didn't end up going as planned, and I guess he ended up murdering her and setting her apartment on fire to kind of cover up the evidence. He had planned on getting her to pay his rent for his apartment, but all he had ended up getting out of all of this was $30 and the jewelry that he had stolen for his girlfriend. So he didn't even end up getting enough money from Teresita to pay his rent. And I mean, like, that's sickening anyways, but $30 and a few pieces of jewelry to murder somebody? Like, what is wrong with this guy? There has never really been any explanation as to why Teresita was found completely naked, but again, he had killed her because the robbery had gone wrong and he had set the apartment on fire to burn any evidence. What's even more crazy about this is they allowed Remy being possessed to be used as kind of like evidence in the court. However, that did not end up helping the case at all, and after 4 weeks, they concluded that this was a mistrial due to a deadlocked jury. And that is pretty much where this all ended for quite a while, I believe about 2 years. And then one day after the 2-year anniversary of the murder of Teresita Basa, Alan Chowry confessed to the murder in front of a judge who gave him 4 years for aggravated robbery, 14 years for murder, and another 6 years for arson, but he was actually paroled after not even serving 5 years. I think that that part of the case is the most absolutely horrible thing about this entire case. Obviously, this case in itself is super strange and obviously very interesting because of the fact that Teresita pretty much solved her own murder if she had in fact possessed her coworker. But the fact that her killer served less than 5 years in prison for what he did to her is just absolutely horrible. This case is sickening. There's no other way to describe this case. There's no other way to talk about this case. He murdered her for nothing, for no reason. She never did anything to him. There was no bad blood. He murdered her for absolutely no reason. Not that there ever is a reason to murder somebody, but in cases like this where there wasn't even a motive and he is out of jail. He was out of jail pretty quickly. He didn't even serve a good amount of time. It's just absolutely sickening. And honestly, it makes me so angry. My heart sincerely goes out to all of the loved ones of Teresita Basa and anybody who knew her or who was personally affected by this case. It is just absolutely heartbreaking and again sickening how this case ended up playing out. But guys, that brings us to the end of today's video. If you like this video, please give it a big thumbs up. Don't forget to comment down below what you'd like to see in my future videos, and don't forget to subscribe and turn on that notification bell so that you don't miss any future videos from me. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye guys!